Well, let me welcome you back to the Grace Cafe. My name is Mark Ray. I'm Executive Director of the Grace Center for Spiritual Development. You can find us here on YouTube. Click on Grace Cafe. We'd love it if you'd click subscribe and also click that little bell. We want to expand the audience to a larger audience for people who are getting a chance to hear these wonderful guests that we've had on board, these experts in a number of different fields. Let me start this Grace Cafe with a question. Many of you have gone through strategic planning. You've done a strategic plan for your business. You've done a number of different planning exercises. But the question on the table is, have you ever done a strategic plan for your life? Have you ever laid out a strategic plan for your life? If you have, wonderful. If you haven't, why not? My guest today, a man who's becoming a good friend. I appreciate the time we've had a chance to spend together. His name is Kyle Vann. He is the retired Senior VP at Koch Industries, a consultant to a number of oil companies, sits on a number of boards. He is on the board also of Generous Giving and Mars Hill Productions. He's got a wife and kids and grandkids. But one of the reasons I'm really excited about you getting to know Kyle is he shared with me a number of weeks ago an idea called a life plan, a strategic plan for your life. So Kyle, thanks for being a part of this. Good to see you. Welcome to Grace Cafe. We're glad to have you a part here.
Looking forward to it, Mark.
So let me start this whole thing and kind of frame a two series of questions for you. Number one, define a life plan. Tell us what a life plan is. And then second, how did you get into it? How did you get introduced? Kind of give us the testimony around your own life plan.
Okay. Well, first of all, you did a great job of saying it's really a strategic plan for your life. So that's quite honestly, that's the punchline. It's a little so just like in business where you have a strategic plan where you've got a vision and then you have certain strategies, it's the same way of looking at your life holistically. And the only thing I will tell you, it breaks up your life into four dimensions. One we call personal, which tends to be your bucket list stuff. It gets into your faith, your family, and then your career. So those are kind of the four dimensions, but it helps you to, once you set your purpose, it then helps you to align what strategy should I have within each of these four dimensions. And the main thing is to think about it. It's to try to help lead an integrated life, the best way I would put it. So your life is integrated across all dimensions at all times. Okay. So that's kind of a little more sophisticated version of it, but it's still a strategic plan for your life. And it's something that it looks at different time dimensions over a period of the rest of your life. What would you do over the next 3 years, which is a little bit more tactical, and then it always asks you the key question: 6 months to live, what are you going to do? So it really makes sure you never lose sight that we don't know how long we're going to live, so let's make sure we're making the first things first.
So how did you get introduced into a life plan?
I when I was in Wichita, Kansas with Koch Industries, this is back in the late 90s, I was discipled by a navigator. I became to faith at age 42. I came very late in life.
Yes.
Kicking and screaming as an agnostic. Anyway, so I was mentored and discipled, and then by a navigator for 7 years, and then he was also doing other people, other guys, and we then would disciple others. So as you know, the disciple making model. And
sure.
So I moved to Houston, Texas, with Koch Industries to become the CEO of what we called Entergy Koch, which was a joint venture. And at that time, my mentor said, hey, why don't we get all of the lieutenants together? I was one of these lieutenants. Let's all go to the Navigator headquarters over in Colorado Springs, near the Garden of Gods.
Yes.
Let's spend 3 days together, and we're going to have Lauren Sanney, who's the former head of Navigators. He had retired by then, and we're going to go through a retreat together. Well, on the last day, Lauren comes in and says, I want to take you boys through something called a life plan. I didn't know what he was talking about. And it was at that point, very quickly, he had us break our lives into those four dimensions, and he had us go out and say, I want you to think about all the key things you want to do the rest of your life in these four areas. We all came back, shared it with him. He said, those are good. Now I want you to go back and figure out what you want to do in the next 3 years. So you just better start prioritizing. So we did that, and he came back and shared some ideas. And then that's when he hit the punchline was we didn't see coming. Now you got 6 months to live. And that was the eye opener. So there's 3 things I walked away with. One is how do I know how long I have to live? Secondly, I've been sitting there working for Koch Industries with my head down for 25, 30 years, not really giving any thought to my life. It's just Coke. And maybe I need to be as strategic with my life as I am with my time at Coke. And so those 2 big ideas kind of were what really kind of hit me at the time. And I was also at that time around 50, and I just read the book Halftime and was trying to think about what do I really need, what from a significant standpoint, what do I need to be doing? So that all built itself into the calculus of doing the first one.
Sure. That's, interesting to hear in your case. Not only did you come to faith older, but you came to this whole strategic plan thought process at 50 older.
Right.
Really. So here's kind of first question is, as a part of a life plan, anybody can do this at any time.
Yes.
You could do this at 20. You could do this at
probably the
35.
earlier the better.
Right. Well, and given the fact that there are 4 categories, personal, faith, family, and career, 2 things I love about this. First of all, it's simple. I've done a lot of strategic plans that you got to cut through a whole lot of weeds to get down any kind of meat.
Right.
But if I'm talking about 4 categories and lifelong goal, 3-year goal, and immediate or 6 months, that does shift those priorities. Second thing is, and I love this about the simplicity of this, it also demands that integration. Talk to me just for a moment about what that integration means over these 4 categories.
Okay. As I mentioned to you earlier, sometimes people talk about living a balanced life. And
yes.
I'm not sure that's the right metaphor. I really believe it's more about being an integrated life. Balanced life kind of makes it sound like there's all these little silos, and I'm going to make sure I'm in the right silo the right amount of time. An integrated life is where those 4 dimensions, you hopefully can, first of all, you're the same person in all 4 of those dimensions you are. You're not different at faith than you are at work and all that. But the other thing is, what I love about it, Mark, is the idea of leverage. We only have 24 hours a day, all of us do. And what hits you is if suddenly you've got these 4 sets of goals within these dimensions, the more you can take, if you can get 2 or 3 of them knocked off with one type of activity, that's leverage. And so what it really taught me to do is, how can I, for example, faith and family, and personal. Well, I like vacations. Well, what if suddenly vacations could be more family oriented around a faith object? I mean, suddenly now you've done something that hits 3 of the 4. I call that leverage. So that made me think about can I be more strategic with my time in that? So I wouldn't have thought about that.
So as you see this integration occur, let me make a spiritual statement here. Do you see this as, let me ask you to put it into this category. We become believers in Jesus Christ. We move from there to being disciples of Jesus, and there is a process of being a disciple for Jesus. Could this be a process? Could this be a life plan? Be also part of that becoming a disciple of Jesus? Can that be implemented in here?
I hadn't really thought about it that way until you mentioned it to me. But I would say for me, it certainly has been. It's really about first of all, I believe in what I call whole life discipleship. In other words, I'm a disciple, whether I'm on the golf course or whatever. So, and since this plan is talking about me integrating my life, and my ultimate goal is to honor Christ wherever I am at any time. That's the big idea.
Yes.
Then this is a part of discipleship.
Sure.
So that's the way I look. It's not just about studying the Bible and memorizing Scripture and all that. It's also about, how do I witness? How do I do everything? So in a way, I feel I think it would be any person ought to want to do this, even if they weren't a Christian. But I think especially for us Christians, we should figure out a way because we're also honoring God with everything we do, hopefully. And this helped me think about that in a more strategic way.
And this is incredibly applicational.
Very.
You just talked about memorizing, knowing scripture, memorizing verses, all of that. That's one side of this, but the application of what you've memorized, the application of what you've studied, the application of what you've learned has an impact on your personal life, on your faith, on your family, and on your career. Has impact in all four of those areas.
It has, and that's the other thing in business. If you have a vision that's it can't be executed or it can't be measured, then that's not a vision. And so when you put this life plan together, the things I put they're specific things that I'm going to do over a specific period of time. So in other words, it's actually a challenge to me. I'm going to give you one. Let me give you a simple one. The one that was probably the most impactful to me after I started doing this. I was doing this with another young man, and we were doing this together. And so I was with the trading company at the time with Coke. But anyway, I came home, and unfortunately, I'd fallen into a deal like most men. I'd come home, and Barbara and I would have a quick chat, and then we'd eat dinner. And I was kind of a zombie. I was worn out from work, okay? So we're watching TV, and all of a sudden the phone rings. And it's the CFO of our company. So I go over and answer the phone, and we're on the phone laughing and talking about this deal we're on, and I'm all energized. I go back into zombie mode. And I looked over at my wife, and I remember Barbara had this very wistful look, and I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Oh, nothing." I said, "No, seriously, what's wrong?" She said, "Boy, I wish you enjoyed talking to me like you do your friends at work." Boy, that was just boom.
Oh, man.
So we had a great talk, and I remember Barbara saying, I said, "Well, what?" I was working on this life plan, kind of my first one. And I said, "Well, one of the key things here is our family. So what do I need to do?" And she said, "Well, I'd love to be your best friend again." So that became a target. And so it's not just, okay, that sounds good, but now how do I do that? Well, let's start having lunch once a week. Let's be specific. Let's start playing golf together. But you also have to be tactical. It's not just, hey, that's a great idea. And so that's a simple example.
That's the strategic side of this thing too. And I can also see that's the integration side of this thing, how these things begin to form together.
Exactly.
So question here, I know you've been doing this with a number of people. This could almost be a path of discipleship. So how do I train somebody else to do this? Could be that I want to bring the wisdom of a life plan to another person to teach them how to do this. Am I down a right path? Is that?
No, you are. That's exactly. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but all the people that I've let's just say discipled, mentored, whatever term you want to use, we go through this. Because I ultimately want to say, if you want me to speak into your life, we need to speak into the whole life, not just. Because a lot of times, because I'm a business guy, a lot of times people want your friendship partly because they want your business knowledge. I said, well, you can have my business knowledge, but you're going to get something else too.
Yeah, well, it's part of the deal. If you want to be in this relationship, the relationship to me is more than just the business relationship. It's the whole life relationship. I love that
really
view.
The mentor I had, Mark, was it's funny. He felt like God had given him for the time he had left, he wanted to invest in those people that he said were available. He used the term FAT. You've probably heard of it. Faithful, available, teachable. If you weren't that, then he wasn't going to waste his time. And that's where I finally learned to say, look, I've only got a limited amount of time. So if I'm going to invest in a person, we're going to do this too. So, because it was so meaningful to me.
I can remember an old story that a friend of mine told me when he was going to Dallas Theological Seminary, and Howard Hendricks was there, who's now gone to be with the Lord. And Hendricks used to end his classes after a semester, and he would say, look, I've got so much to do, I'm not going to seek you out. But if you want me to mentor you, you got to come find me. You got to come. And he said, I heard him speak one time, and he said, I was amazed at the number of people that would never seek me out. They would never come talk to me. And so, a lot of people love to say, I love being around Prof. He was my prof. I knew. And he said, but actually it's the ones that sought me out that I knew they were serious about discipleship. They were serious about engaging in a relationship. This has that same feel. The opportunity to sit with another another person? The opportunity, can it be done in groups easily?
Where it's particularly good, I think, Mark, is like we have a small group of 4 guys. We've been meeting together forever, but we've all kind of done our own life plan. And what's really good is that, hey, not only do we pray for each other, but ultimately each of us knows what the other one's life plan is. And so that's why I think it's particularly good if you're in a small group or whatever. If you did it together as an exercise, you can help each other. And then when you're finished with one, I hand it off. Obviously, you can share it with your wife, but you also, I think, would share it with whoever you're working with, either a person discipling you or even a person you're discipling. So I think it's very powerful in groups too.
I could see it. There are many times, and I'm going to throw up a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, when you're in small groups, when you're in discipleship groups, when you're in groups of guys, and the question comes up, what can I pray for you about? Many times that prayer goes to, and I'm not saying that praying for my second cousin's best friend's big toe is not something worthy of prayer. Yeah. Don't hear me not saying that. But if I've just talked with him about his personal goals, if I've just talked with him about his faith goals, if I've just talked with him about his family goals and his career goals,
right,
man, do I know a lot, and a lot of deep, specific things that I can be absolutely praying and expectant for God to show up in those things.
I couldn't agree more. And that's where I am. And now at least I'm not big on lists. but this, when you share this kind of depth with somebody, you're being vulnerable. And,
absolutely.
And but anyway, I think, yes, it can easily be used in groups. I've done it one-on-one, and I've done it when there was 3 of us that were kind of mentoring 6 guys, and we were all together in a big group. But everybody did a life plan, and then we'd split up the 3 leaders each had 2 of the younger guys, but we went through their analysis together. The most impactful one I ever had was on a young man that was here, and he had his own business in the Woodlands, doing very successful. But we went through this. He just really feels like, he said, I think God doesn't want me to live in the Woodlands anymore. He said, I really feel like I want my kids to grow up outside this bubble. And they ended up moving to Colorado Springs and changed businesses. And I wasn't planning on any of that, but he came to that conclusion. And I said, boy, I feel a lot of pressure on this one that you're going to do this. But ultimately, that was a very and the family's done great.
That's fantastic.
That was a shock to me. It wasn't just making a minor change.
There seems to be something when you commit it to paper also. When you commit it to paper that you can go back and review, you're going, there it is in black and white. Is this...
It's also interesting, Mark, I will tell you, it's not like, just in business, you don't want to put this big tome together and then sit it on a shelf that you never look at.
Never see it again.
But I will say the flip side is, once you put the time in to kind of put your strategy together, it's not like you look at it every day. I mean, it's locked in. And sometimes I won't revisit it for months. Sometimes it might even be a year, but I know I'm kind of acting out, and then I'll look back and say, yep, I'm on target here. Well, I'm missing this. So it's not like I'm looking at it every day, but it's guided every decision I've made.
So 2 questions. I'm starting to kind of put on paper, here's personal, here's faith, here's family, here's career, here's lifelong goals, here's 3-year goals, here's 6-month, which helps me prioritize. Once I've got that first plan locked in place, how manageable is it when circumstances change, when situations change? Is it easy to dive back into it and reshape it, or am I locked into?
No, it's dynamic. I mean, I think your ultimate mission is to leave an integrated life, honor Christ in all aspects. That doesn't change. But suddenly some of like, for example, I've found that about every 2 to 3 years, I'll make changes. I mean, it could be financial. Like, for example, when I retired in 2005 to go into the next phase of life, I wasn't sure what my career, what's career mean?
Yeah.
And I went into a second career. So that was a critical point. When suddenly we started having grandkids, that was a different point. When you start looking at financial planning, that changed with kids got out of college and things. So there's always things that kind of change. Or, for example, one of them was one of my goals originally, personal, was to break par in golf. And so I did that. I had to put a new one. So now I want to shoot my age, things like, so things change. But now something could happen where something catastrophic, an illness or something like that. Sure. And then that really changes it. But it's not etched in stone, but it's a really good guide.
Is there, and I'm not trying to be legalistic in this at all, but in each of these 4 categories, what you put in 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals, or is it just as the Holy Spirit leads you? Is it just, here's where I land?
I found this is from practice. I think it would be, if you end up with 10 things in each one, you're probably not.
You're going to drive yourself nuts.
I would say in general, I found like 3 to 4.
3 to 4, yeah.
I was going to pull up I was trying to pull up an old one I had, but I would say, for example, let's just a simple one. One was let's just say for me, I want to shoot my age in golf. Okay, that's my sports one. Another one was that I had but this actually was a multiple one. Barbara and I always wanted to go on a river cruise in Europe. Unfortunately, that's on hold right now.
Yeah.
That
hard to travel with this.
You want to go to some place or visit something. So the personal ones are just kind of more your fun things.
Yeah, bucket list kind of stuff.
I have 2 or 3. On family things, it'll typically be one with Barbara on something we want to do. It'll be something around the grandkids and the kids. And sure. There might be and some also could also in there might have to do with friends. But ultimately, I found that usually there's 2 to 4 on each one.
Okay, 2 to 4 on each one. So and manageable.
And measurable.
Easy to lock in, measurable, you bet.
Like for example, on family and finance, one of them was we wanted to make sure we got a will and estate, so we got that done. And then all of a sudden those change over time, those require. So sure. That's kind of always stays on there, if you want to know the truth. But some are kind of permanent fixtures like wills and estates.
Yeah.
But other than things, it'll change. Once you accomplish something, you'll add something.
Cross it off and yeah.
Yep.
So we're coming close to the end of time, so let me wrap 2 final questions around this. The first one is this, and this is kind of really getting maybe a little more personal with you. Yeah. And if you're more than free to say, let's put that for another time, or let's don't. Obviously, in the midst of you being a believer since you were 42 years old, doing something like this, the Lord is right smack in the middle of it with you. Because right. You're consulting him in the midst of this. So from your very first one, what was something that you can remember that the Lord just went, Kyle, remember this, know this? What's that one thing that you could say, man, in my very first one I did, and it hasn't changed. I mean, it's kind of remained constant. What's that one truth that that this helped you uncover?
I'd say, well, one is just that Lord is the Lord of my life in all 4 dimensions. So that was kind of the overarching. But I'd have to say that for me, it probably had that little aha moment with Barbara. I'd have to say family has clearly become. I feel like I'm coming late to the game. I'm kind of an Abraham, and it's really the emphasis has been on me and Barbara to be the Abraham and Sarah for our group. So Sometimes I'll notice like I'm actually reemphasizing that again now because there was a period where everybody got married, they've had kids, and suddenly you start seeing they're spreading out all over. I want to make sure that my family is still the number one thing that I work on outside my faith with God. So I would have to say that's the number one thing. I will share one other thing with you that came out.
Please.
We had this discussion about work. To me, I've never seen in the Bible where it talks about retirement, and I believe in expirement, but not retirement. And what was really interesting is I had never thought about, I had the old American dream, hey, I'm going to retire when I'm 60 or pick a number. And then, of course, it happened when we sold the business, and I still enjoy working. Well, all of a sudden, I realized I went from career number 1 to career number 2. I called it phase 2. And I've been in that for 15 years. And now I'm thinking phase 3. I plan on, let's just say, working career-wise as long as somebody will have me and I can do it because I love it. And so that's another thing that's really been I've really, work is godly ordained, and I would love to stay working as long as I can in a way that I can be influencing. So that's another thing that's always been through the 20 years I've done. I've made sure that I'm trying in an area where I can not only advance the kingdom, but also try to still stay involved in work, because faith at work is one of the key things I enjoy being.
We're going to have a discussion about that on another Grace Cafe at some point in time, because I'm a firm believer that we serve God no matter the circumstance. We serve God in business, we serve God in the pastorate, we serve God on the mission field. We are in service to God,
Right.
Even if today I don't have an actual job to go to. I'm still in service to God. That's still my work. That's still the part. Yeah, we can talk about that in
another time. I got a great story on that.
Good. Love to hear that in another time. Let me ask this final question, and I'm going to couch this by saying you've talked an awful lot personally about this, but how has your life been reshaped by the Lord because of a life plan? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like, first of all, this this whole process was brought to me actually through a discipleship. It started at the Navigator deal at Glen Eyrie. So in a way, I feel like it's a tool. I'll put it that way. It's a godly tool that has allowed me, I think, to be more of the kind of person God wants me to be in all aspects of my life. So that's the best way I would answer it.
It's a great final statement. I really appreciate that. Kyle, thank you so much for spending time with us on this. It's kind of opened up a whole line of discussion, a whole line of thought, a whole line of discipleship thought. And I love the idea behind this life plan. Thank you for sharing that with us, for sharing personally with us. I appreciate that. Really glad to see you, and hopefully we'll get another shot at a few more of these kind of conversations. I'm glad you're a part. Thank you all for joining us here on Grace Cafe. This is some of the great content that you're going to hear from wonderful, wonderful guests. You can find us on YouTube again. Find us on YouTube under Grace Cafe. You can also download the Grace app and listen to all of the wonderful and see all of the wonderful Grace Cafes we've had down through the years. Thank you for joining us. Love being a part of this with you. We look forward to seeing you again on another Grace Cafe. Thanks so much.